I thought I was gonna die. Not from a gun. Not from drugs. Not even from some crazy accident. But from a damn cat. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But let me explain. It all started on the coldest night of December in Spokane, Washington. I just finished a 12-hour shift at the warehouse. My boots were soaked. My back was killing me. I just wanted to go home, crack open a beer, and pass the hell out. But fate had other plans. I was cutting through an alley shortcut to my apartment. That's when I heard it, this god-awful screech. High-pitched. Desperate. Like something or someone was being torn apart. I froze. My instincts told me to keep walking. Mind my business. That's how you survive in a city like this. But then I heard the growling. Multiple growls. Low. Wet. Hungry. I turned the corner and saw it, 3 mangy, wild-looking dogs circling something under a dumpster. One of them had foam around its mouth. Another was limping like it had been in 100 fights and lost all of them. And then I saw it. A cat. Tiny. White. Shaking. Blood around one paw. Its green eyes locked on mine, and I swear I saw pure, human fear in them. The dogs were seconds away from tearing it apart. I didn't think. I didn't weigh the pros and cons. I just ran at them, yelling like a mad ant. Hey! Get the hell out of here! One of the dogs barked, loud and guttural. Another lunged at me. I kicked it square in the ribs and it yelped, backing off. My adrenaline was off the charts. I grabbed a broken broom handle from the trash pile and started swinging like a lunatic. Get back! After what felt like forever, they scattered, growling, limping, vanishing into the shadows. Silence. Just me. A shaking broom handle. And a bleeding cat staring at me like I was either his savior or a bigger threat than the dogs. Hey, buddy, I knelt slowly. You okay? It didn't move. I reached out expecting claws or teeth, but instead it limped toward me. Rubbed its bloody head against my boot. I swear to God, it thanked me. I wrapped it in my flannel and took it home. Didn't even think twice. I had no idea that was the night my life would completely change. I didn't know the first thing about cats. Never owned one. Never wanted one. Grew up in a house where pets weren't allowed, and even as an adult I just figured animals were more trouble than they were worth. But that night, something shifted. I named him Ghost. Because of his fur, white as snow, and the way he moved so silently like he wasn't even real. I cleaned his wounds with warm water and hydrogen peroxide. He flinched but didn't fight me. Just stared up with those damn green eyes. Like he understood everything. Like he was waiting to see if I'd finish what the dog started. But I didn't. I stayed up all night making sure he didn't bleed too much. Wrapped his paw in gauze. Gave him some of the tuna I had in the back of the pantry. I even let him curl up on the only warm spot in the apartment, my bed. The next morning, I called off work and took him to the vet. They said he had a fractured paw, some deep scratches, and was badly dehydrated. But he'd survive. You saving him probably gave him a shot no one else would, the vet told me. Most strays in this condition don't last the night. I nodded, but I didn't say anything. Because deep down, I already knew that. I'd seen the way those dogs looked at him. Like meat. Ghost became part of my life faster than I expected. He followed me from room to room. Waited by the door when I left for work. Slept beside me every night. I told myself I was just helping him heal. That once he was better, I'd let him go. But I didn't. He stayed. And for a while, that was it. Just a guy and his cat. Weird little companionship. Quiet understanding. Until 3 months later, the night everything flipped. It was late past midnight. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV still on, Ghost curled up on my chest. I woke up to a sound. Not loud. Just wrong. A click. A soft creak. Then footsteps. Inside my apartment. My blood turned to ice. Ghost shot up. Ears flat. Eyes wide. He wasn't moving like a lazy pet anymore. He was alert. Hunting. I sat up slowly, heart pounding out of my ribs. Then I saw the shadow. Someone was in my hallway. Inside. My door was locked, I always locked it. Had a bolt and a chain. But that didn't matter now. The figure moved closer. I was frozen. Completely paralyzed. Until Ghost leapt off my chest and straight at the intruder. There was a yell. Loud. Then a crash. Then silence. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my couch and ran to the hall. The guy was on the floor, clutching his face, blood streaming between his fingers. Ghost was standing over him, back arched, puffed out like a damn demon. The man scrambled up and ran out the way he came, in through the fire escape. I stood there, staring at my cat. The same cat I pulled from under a dumpster. He looked back at me. And I knew it. He just saved my life. The cops came 15 minutes later. I told them everything, the sound, the shadow, the break-in. I left out one detail. I didn't mention the cat. They'd never believe me anyway. What would I say? My cat chased off a home invader? They'd laugh me off the damn report. But I knew what I saw. And more than that, I knew what I felt. Ghost didn't just scratch the guy and run. He attacked. On purpose. Like he understood the threat. Like he knew that man would have hurt me. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, staring at Ghost. He curled up beside me, eventually purring softly like nothing had happened. But I couldn't sleep. Because something about all of it didn't sit right. Why had the guy picked my apartment? Why that night? How did he even get in? Next morning, I called the landlord. Asked if they had cameras in the building. They didn't. So I installed my own. Front door. Windows. Fire escape. I wasn't taking any chances. A week passed. Then, too, Ghost went back to his usual self, quiet, low maintenance, weirdly human in the way he behaved. He even started pawing at the fridge whenever I opened it, like he wanted to pick his own damn dinner. I laughed it off. But I didn't forget. And then it happened again. 3rd week of April. I came home from work and found my window cracked open. The lock busted. A muddy boot print on the sill. Inside, nothing was taken. But everything felt wrong. Like the air had been touched. Ghost was under the bed. Hissing. Not at me, but at the window. I checked the footage. Nothing. The guy must have known where the cameras were. Or maybe it was someone else. But the pattern was starting to scare me. 2 break-ins. Both times Ghost reacted before I even understood what was going on. That's when the idea hit me. What if it wasn't random? What if Ghost wasn't just any stray? What if I'd picked up something bigger? I started digging. Not like full-on conspiracy theory rabbit holes. Just basic stuff. Animal instinct. Feral behavior. Cat intelligence. You'd be shocked at what's out there. Stories of cats sensing seizures. Detecting cancer. Running into burning buildings to wake their owners. They weren't just animals. Some of them knew things. One article stuck with me. A forum post from a guy in Detroit. He wrote, "My cat saved me from getting jumped outside a liquor store." He scratched the guy's face before he even touched me. But here's the thing, he's never acted like a normal cat. I swear he follows conversations. Watches people. Like he's keeping score. That hit too close to home. I started watching Ghost more carefully. And that's when I noticed it. Every time I passed by that alley, the one where I found him, he'd stare at it. Freeze up. His tail would puff. Eyes wide. Breath slow. He remembered. He wasn't just surviving that night. He was marking it. Something had happened in that alley. Something more than just a stray attack. And I was about to find out what. I decided to go back. To the alley. Not because I wanted to relive that night, but because something about it felt unfinished. Like the story hadn't ended when I carried Ghost out of there wrapped in my flannel. It was around 8 p.m. Sunset was dipping below the rooftops. The alley was darker than I remembered. Same trash piles. Same broken glass. Same stench of piss and rot. Ghost sat in my backpack, zipped halfway so he could poke his head out. He didn't fight me. Didn't squirm. But his eyes didn't blink once the whole walk there. We turned the corner. And that's when he growled. I didn't even know cats could growl like that. Low. Guttural. Like a warning siren from something primal. Then I saw it. Scratched into the dumpster's rusted metal side, deep, angry claw marks. Not dog-sized. Bigger. Longer. Like someone or something had carved them. Ghost started hissing. Clawing at the edge of the backpack. He wanted out. I let him go. He jumped down, limped forward, then stopped exactly where I'd first seen him bleeding months ago. He sniffed the ground. Looked up. His back arched. Then he did something that chilled me to the bone. He meowed. Loud. Over and over. Like a siren call. Like he was summoning something. The hairs on my arms stood up. I stepped back. "What the hell are you doing, man?" I whispered. Then I heard it. From the other end of the alley. Movement. Not footsteps. Scratching. And then, a bark. No. Multiple barks. I turned. And there they were. 3 dogs. Same number as that night. But this time, they weren't strays. They had collars. One had a tag. Bones. Their eyes glowed in the low light. Their teeth bared instantly. They weren't scared of me. They recognized me. Ghost didn't flinch. He stepped in front of me. Tiny. Fragile. Standing between me and 3 beasts that could rip him in half in seconds. I yelled. Waved my arms. Picked up a pipe from the ground. Get the hell back. But they weren't looking at me anymore. They were focused on him. Then Ghost did something insane. He charged. Straight at the biggest dog. No. But it was too late. He was already on top of it. Claws out. A blur of white fury. The dog howled. The others scattered in confusion. I ran in, swinging the pipe. One dog snapped at my leg, I caught it under the chin and it yelped, bolting into the shadows. The third one ran without even trying to fight. By the time I turned around, it was over. Ghost stood on top of the biggest one, breathing hard, blood on his fur. Not his. The dog whimpered, tried to crawl away, but Ghost just stared down at it. Dominant. Unmoving. He'd won. I picked him up. He didn't resist. Just nuzzled into my chest. We walked home in silence. That night, as he lay beside me, I realized something I should have known all along. He hadn't been some random stray. He hadn't just survived that night. He'd been hunted. And now he was hunting back. The next morning, I woke up different. Something in me had shifted. You don't just watch a 5-pound animal face off with death and win without feeling that. Ghost was asleep on the windowsill, the early sunlight turning his white fur golden. He looked peaceful. Innocent. Like the night before hadn't happened. But I knew better. And the more I thought about it, the more questions started piling up. Why did those same dogs come back? Why did they have collars this time? And why did Ghost act like he knew them? I had to find answers. I started with the tag I'd seen bones. I searched local pet registries, animal shelters, even Facebook lost and found groups. Took me hours, but eventually I found a match. A woman posted 6 months ago. Our pitbull Bones went missing in the West End area. Last seen near the scrapyard. If found, please call. West End. That was only a mile from where I'd found Ghost. I called the number. A tired, raspy voice answered. Hello? Hi. I saw your post about Bones. Your dog. Silence. Then a sigh. You're about 6 months late, man. I think I saw him. Last night. That got her attention. You, what? I told her where. I left out Ghost. Just said the dog looked sick, maybe feral. She went quiet again. Then she said something that knocked the air out of me. He wasn't like that before. We didn't lose him. He was taken. Taken? By these guys, they train strays to fight. Underground ring. Real sick stuff. Cops won't touch it. They took Bones when he got out of our yard. When we finally tracked down who had him, he was gone. Gone. Vanished. Like they dumped him somewhere after he lost. My skin went cold. A fighting ring. That explained the collars. The aggression. The scars. That explained why Ghost had been nearly torn apart. He wasn't just a stray. He was a survivor of that same sick system. They'd used him. Tried to break him. And he'd gotten away. But now? They wanted him back. Or dead. I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at Ghost. He opened one eye. Looked right at me. And I swear, there was no fear in him. Just purpose. Like he'd been waiting for me to catch up. That's when I made a decision. If these sick bastards were still out there, we weren't hiding anymore. We were going to find them. And end it. For Ghost. For Bones. For all the ones who didn't make it out. I didn't know where to start. It's not like underground dogfighting rings advertised themselves. But I had something better than a lead, I had a reason. And I had Ghost. First thing I did was head back to that alley during the day. It felt different in the sunlight, less haunted. But I wasn't there to chase ghosts. I was looking for a trail. And I found one. Down behind the dumpster, wedged between 2 broken crates, was a tattered piece of nylon. A leash. Frayed at the edges. Caked in dried blood. It was dark red, almost black. I picked it up with shaking hands. Attached to it was a tag, not like a normal pet tag. It was stamped with a number, #47B. That wasn't for identification. That was a mark. Like inventory. I took it home and laid it on the kitchen table. Ghost jumped up, sniffed it once, and hissed like he recognized it. His back arched. First stood straight up. He knew that leash. That tag. That life. I went back to the internet. Digging deeper now. I started searching dark forums, animal cruelty reports, Reddit threads buried in downvotes. Eventually, I found it. A user who posted about a place just outside Spokane. Abandoned warehouse. Middle of nowhere. Training ground for animals they use in entertainment fights. The post was 2 months old. No pictures. No follow-up. But the location stuck. I mapped it. 30 minutes from my apartment. I packed a flashlight, gloves, pepper spray, a crowbar, and a small GoPro. Not because I was planning to play hero. But because if what I found was real, I needed proof. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just left a note on my fridge. If I don't come back, it wasn't an accident. I tucked Ghost into his carrier, strapped it into the passenger seat of my truck, and hit the road. He didn't meow. Didn't move. Just stared straight ahead. Like he already knew what was waiting for us. The warehouse looked exactly how you'd expect a horror movie to start. Rust-stained walls, half-collapsed roof, empty lots on either side full of broken cars and old tires. No cameras. No people. Just silence. I parked behind an old van and cut the engine. Ghost started growling the second I opened the door. This was it. I pulled the crowbar from the back and made my way to the side door. Locked, of course. But not for long. One good yank and I was inside. The air hit me like a punch in the face. Sweat. Blood. Urine. Fear. The smell of suffering. My flashlight flickered on. Cages. Dozens of them. Empty now. But stained. Chewed. Bent from the inside. Chains. Muzzles. Shock collars. This place wasn't abandoned. It had just moved. But they'd left behind enough to tell their whole damn story. And then I heard it. A soft thump. From the far corner. I turned. And there, curled in a cage half-covered by a tarp, was a dog. Shaking. Still breathing. Still alive. My heart dropped. I crouched slowly, not wanting to spook him. He was medium-sized, maybe a lab mix, but so thin I could count his ribs. His fur was patchy, eyes dull and distant. One of his ears was torn and his legs were trembling like he hadn't stood in days. He didn't bark. Didn't growl. Just looked at me. Broken. I reached through the cage bars and whispered, "Hey, buddy, it's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." He flinched but didn't move away. Then Ghost, still in his carrier, let out a low, rumbling meow. The dog's ears perked. For the first time, he reacted. I set the flashlight on the ground, found the cage latch, and yanked it open with the crowbar. Rust flaked off, and the door creaked. The dog didn't run. He just crawled forward and pressed his head into my knee. Jesus Christ. What kind of hell had he been through? I checked his neck, no tag, no collar. But burned into the skin behind his left ear was the same number I'd seen on that leash. #47B. This was one of theirs. I pulled my phone out, snapped pictures, cage numbers, bloodstains, the tattoo, everything. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the camera straight. This wasn't just abuse. This was organized. I had what I needed. I picked up the dog, he barely weighed 30 pounds, and carried him to the truck. Laid him gently on a blanket in the back seat. Ghost meowed again, but it wasn't his usual tone. It was soft. Mournful. He looked at the dog like he knew him. And maybe he did. These two could have been cage mates. Survivors of the same nightmare. I drove straight to the emergency vet. The techs took him in fast. Said he was severely dehydrated and anemic but might pull through. I paid in cash. Left no name. Didn't want questions. Didn't want attention. Because I wasn't done. I went home, sat Ghost on my lap, and pulled up every picture I took. Then I made a burner Reddit account. And I posted it all. Photos. Coordinates. Descriptions of the cages, the smell, the pain. I attached the video footage from my GoPro, low quality, shaky, but real. Then I hit upload. The post exploded. Within 24 hours, it had thousands of upvotes. People were furious. Outraged. Sharing it across platforms. Tagging local news, animal rights groups, rescue orgs. A few called it fake. But most knew. You couldn't fake that kind of horror. The next day, my inbox was flooded with messages. Journalists. Activists. Even a few anonymous accounts claiming to know more. One of them stood out. It was a single sentence. "You have no idea how deep this goes. Be careful. They're watching." I stared at that message for a long time. Ghost sat beside me, purring like he hadn't just helped blow open a criminal operation. But I couldn't shake the feeling crawling up my spine. Because whoever these people were, they weren't done. And now they knew I wasn't either. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear. Out of readiness. The kind of mental stillness that only comes when you know someone's coming for you and you're ready to meet them at the door. I moved the couch in front of the door. Charged every camera battery. Kept the crowbar beside my bed and the pepper spray on my nightstand. Every 30 minutes I checked the windows. Ghost never left my side. He didn't sleep either. Just sat facing the door, tail twitching, eyes locked on the hallway like a little sentry. And I swear if he could talk, he'd be saying, "Let them try." By morning, the post had reached over 1 million views. It made local news. Then regional. A popular animal rescue YouTuber picked it up. Called it the most disturbing real-life footage I've ever seen. People were furious. Protesters showed up at the old warehouse, only to find it gutted. Cages removed. Blood hosed off, like someone had cleaned it in the middle of the night. Too late, though. The footage lived online now, and so did the outrage. But then, things started getting weird. First, my landlord called. Said someone had been asking about me. Described as animal control but had no badge, no paperwork. Just questions. Then my manager at the warehouse said 2 guys came by looking for me. Claimed to be friends from out of town. I don't have friends from any town. Third warning came when I found a dead rat nailed to my front door. No note. Just blood, a nail and silence. That's when I packed a bag. Took Ghost. Took my laptop. Took every piece of evidence and backed it up on 4 different encrypted drives. Sent one to my brother out of state. Another to a rescue organization in California that had messaged me, saying if anything happened to me, they'd go public with everything. I left the apartment that night. Got a cheap motel under a fake name. It was me and Ghost again. Just like day one. Hiding. Surviving. Only this time I wasn't running from wild dogs. I was running from the people who trained them. The next message came 3 days later. An email. No sender. No subject. Just a single line. He wasn't the only one who got out. Attached was a picture. A grainy shot of a different cat. Matted fur. Missing an eye. Sitting in a filthy alley somewhere I didn't recognize. But Ghost reacted instantly. He ran across the bed and clawed at my laptop screen. Growling. He knew that cat. This wasn't over. There were more survivors. More victims. More stories to tell. And somehow, I'd become the one person in this twisted chain who could do something about it. Ghost jumped back into my lap, curled into a ball, and stared at the screen. Like he was telling me, "It's your move now." And I knew what I had to do next. The cat in the photo haunted me. Something about her. Yeah, her. Looked familiar even though I'd never seen her before. Maybe it was the eye. Or the burn marks on her front leg. Or maybe it was just the way Ghost responded. He wasn't just curious. He was angry, possessive, agitated. Like she meant something to him. I opened the image in Photoshop. Ran a reverse search, nothing. No metadata, no traceable info. Whoever sent this wanted me to see, not know. But they made a mistake. In the background of the photo, just over the cat's shoulder, was a partially visible street sign. Half broken, dirty, but readable if you knew what to look for. Dunn RD. I searched it. There was a Dunn Road in Tacoma. Industrial district. Nothing but warehouses, mechanics, and sketchy service roads. That was 3 hours away. I packed again. Left the motel. Paid cash for gas. Made sure I wasn't being followed. Ghost rode shotgun, calm as ever. Like he knew where we were going. Like he was leading me. We got to Tacoma around sunset. The street was almost abandoned. One flickering street lamp. A busted fire hydrant leaking water into the gutter. I parked 2 blocks down, walked the rest. Didn't want my truck seen. Didn't want me seen. I followed the alley from the photo. Trash bins, rusted fences, burned out light fixtures. And then I saw her. Same cat. Perched on top of a barrel, licking a wounded paw. She looked at me. Didn't run. But didn't come closer either. Ghost stepped out of the carrier and walked toward her slowly. Like he was approaching royalty. And what happened next? I'll never forget. She meowed once. And out of the shadows, 3 more cats appeared. All of them limping. All of them scarred. One missing a leg. Another with an ear torn clean off. All of them watching. I looked around, heart racing. This wasn't random. This was a network. Survivors. Escapees. Ghost turned to me, eyes wide, and let out the loudest meow I'd ever heard from him. It echoed down the alley like a war cry. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. "You're not supposed to be here." I spun around. A man stood in the shadows. Hoodie. Gloves. Something in his hand. Looked like a baton. He took a step forward. Ghost hissed. The one-eyed cat jumped down from the barrel. The man raised the baton. "You think you're some kind of hero, huh? Posting videos? Stirring up trouble?" I didn't answer. I just reached into my bag and clicked the GoPro. Red light. Recording. He saw it. Paused. Then took another step. "You shouldn't have come here alone." But I wasn't alone. Behind me the cats started growling. Yes, growling. Dozens of eyes shimmered from the alley's darkness. Cats I hadn't even seen before, emerging from crates, rooftops, trash bins. All of them scarred. All of them ready. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a damn army. And Ghost was their general. The man froze. I could see it in his stance, cocky just a second ago, now unsure. That baton in his hand wasn't going to save him. Not from this. Not from them. One of the cats, massive, black, missing half its tail, let out a guttural snarl and started creeping forward. The others followed. It was silent except for their low growls and the scrape of their claws on concrete. I stepped aside. This wasn't my fight anymore. This was theirs. The man backed up. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. He raised the baton and swung at Ghost, but didn't even connect. Ghost ducked under like he knew what was coming, leapt onto a dumpster, and launched himself straight at the guy's face. It was chaos. The alley exploded with motion, fur, claws, teeth. A whirlwind of revenge, not fear. The man screamed, dropped the baton, tried to run. But the cats didn't let him. They didn't kill him. No. They didn't need to. They marked him. Bloodied him. Made him remember. By the time I pulled Ghost off, the guy was curled in a ball, crying, begging. I leaned down just close enough so he could hear me through his sobs. Tell your people, I said. It's over. You're not hunting them anymore. He nodded, shaking. I took his phone, his wallet, snapped pictures of his face red with claw marks, eyes swollen. Then I let him crawl away. He limped off into the shadows, disappearing down the alley, whimpering like a dog with its tail between its legs. I looked around at the cats. They were silent now. Watching. Waiting. Ghost turned to the one-eyed female and meowed once. She blinked slowly, then vanished into the dark with the others like they'd never been there at all. Like shadows retreating after a storm. I picked him up. He was bleeding from his paw again, just a scratch, but his eyes were bright. Fierce. He didn't regret a thing. We got back to the truck just as dawn started breaking. The world outside that alley had no idea what had just happened. But I did. And so did Ghost. That night wasn't just revenge. It was a warning. To the whole sick operation still lurking beneath the surface. The hunted had stopped running. And they'd started fighting back. The world didn't change overnight. The warehouses didn't all shut down. The monsters behind the cages didn't all disappear. But something shifted. 2 days after the alley incident, my video inbox blew up. Clips from strangers. Photos. Anonymous tips. Someone in Denver found a similar setup in an abandoned slaughterhouse. A woman in Oregon swore she'd seen a van loading animals in the middle of the night, same tags, same collars. And more survivors were popping up. Cats. Dogs. Even a few raccoons and foxes. All with scars. All showing up in places they shouldn't survive. And all with the same behavior, unnatural alertness, defensive stances, eyes that had seen things. Like they were waiting. Like they were watching. I started mapping the locations. Every dot told a story. Every line connected a system. These rings weren't isolated. They were organized. Like a damn cartel for animal cruelty. But now their victims were speaking. Not in words, but in actions. In scratches, in stares, in organized silence. And I wasn't the only one noticing. A local rescue shelter reached out. Said someone dropped off a cat with a cracked rib and a number tattooed on her stomach. They named her Mercy. 2 days later, another shelter reported a stray who refused food unless it was served in a metal bowl. The same kind used in fight cages. People started putting it together. And it wasn't just shelters. Hackers. Journalists. Private investigators. All drawn to the fire we started. But I kept my name out of it. No interviews. No spotlight. Because I knew this wasn't about me. It was about them. About Ghost. We stayed moving motel to motel. I'd keep each stay under a fake name, pay in cash, never stay longer than a week. Ghost adapted easily. Every new room he'd patrol like it was his territory. No matter how tired he was, he always watched the doors. Like he knew someone was still looking for us. And he wasn't wrong. One night, I returned to the motel to find the door slightly ajar. Everything inside untouched, but Ghost was hiding under the bed. A single matchstick lay on the nightstand. No note. Just that. I didn't need an explanation. It was a message. They'd found us. But they weren't ready to strike. Not yet. They were testing me. Seeing if I'd break. If I'd run again. But they didn't understand something critical. I wasn't running anymore. And neither was Ghost. We didn't need to be hunted to be dangerous. We were building something. A network. Of survivors. Of witnesses. Of animals and humans united by one common, burning thing. Vengeance. I started calling it the silent uprising. Not officially. Not online. Just in my head. Because that's what it felt like, a war boiling beneath the surface. Not with bullets or riots, but with whispers, scratches, and shadows moving through alleyways at night. It started with Ghost. But now it was growing. People began contacting me through encrypted apps. Former employees from shelters. One guy claimed he used to work security at a training facility in Nevada. He told me things I couldn't forget. They trained him with starvation, shock collars, and darkness. The cats that survived? They were the worst. Wouldn't break. Just kept staring. Like they knew what you were. One message stuck with me most. A woman from Texas. I found a cat with half her jaw missing. Took her in. She sits by the window every night like she's waiting for someone. Or something. And I swear 2 nights ago she growled. At me. Like I said something wrong. They weren't just animals anymore. They were soldiers. Each one carrying stories written in scar tissue. And Ghost? He became something more than just a pet. He was my partner. My protector. But also my compass. I started watching how he reacted to photos, videos, places on the map. He'd paw at the screen when something mattered. Walk away when it didn't. Like he could sense where the next piece of the puzzle was. We started driving again. Oregon. Then California. Always under the radar. Always listening. In Sacramento, we visited a shelter that had taken in a dozen animals from a recent bust. When I walked in with Ghost in my arms, the room went silent. Every cage. Every paw. Every animal watched him. Some backed up. Others whimpered. But one, a cat with a twisted leg and burn marks around her mouth, stood up. Limped to the front of the cage. And bowed her head. I had to look away. That's when I knew we weren't just telling stories anymore. We were building a movement. Each video I posted, blurred faces, distorted voices, grainy footage, got picked up and reposted by bigger accounts. Animal rights groups. Whistleblower forums. Even a few anonymous journalists were quietly threading the narrative into long-form exposes. I never showed Ghost's face directly. He was the myth now. The White Phantom. A ghost cat who escaped the pits and came back to free the others. They thought it was urban legend. Some said it was AI. Some called it crazy. But I didn't care. Because every time I looked into Ghost's eyes, I saw a spark. The same spark I'd seen the night I pulled him from under that dumpster. A spark that said, "We're not done yet. Not until the last cage is empty. Not until the last scar is answered. Not until the last monster pays." We hit Nevada next. The tip was solid. A retired handler from one of the underground rings had posted anonymously on a private forum. Said he had a list, locations, dates, even names. Said he wanted to clean his conscience before the cancer took him. I didn't trust him. But Ghost did. And by now that was all the confirmation I needed. We drove straight through the desert. Nothing but heat, dust, and the low hum of my truck's engine. Ghost sat in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the road ahead like he could feel what was coming. The man's house was a trailer, miles from anything. I knocked. He opened the door in silence. His face was sunken. Oxygen tube in his nose. Skin paper thin. But his eyes, those were alert. Sharp. "You're the one with the cat," he said. I nodded. He looked past me. "Saw Ghost?" Stiffened. "He made it out alive, huh?" I didn't say anything. He stepped aside and let us in. His place was a tomb of secrets. Boxes stacked in corners. Folders. Old VHS tapes. Photos he'd never dared send anyone. He walked to a file cabinet and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Threw it on the table. "Everything I know," he said. "It won't erase what I did. But maybe it'll help stop the next guy." I opened it. And felt sick. Photos of mutilated dogs. Ledgers listing animal names, weights, fight outcomes. Winners. Losers. Disposed. One sheet had code numbers. Hashtag 47B. Hashtag 39C. Hashtag 12F. Ghost's number was on there. So was Bones. And at least 20 others I now recognized from shelters and survivor photos. He didn't stop talking. They used to joke that the cats were just warm-up bait. But some of them they didn't break. Some of them watched. Learned. He looked at Ghost again. This time with something close to fear. He was one of the smart ones, wasn't he? I nodded. "He remembers," I said. "All of it." The man took a shaky breath. "Then God help whoever's still in the business." I stayed another hour. Scanned every document. Photographed every page. Before I left, I turned to him and said, "You're dying. But you get to do one last thing right. Are you willing to say all this on camera?" He hesitated. Then nodded. "I've got nothing left to protect." The interview wasn't polished. Wasn't dramatic. But it was real. A deathbed confession from a man who'd helped build the system and now wanted to burn it down from the inside. I edited the video, masked his face, distorted his voice. Posted it with a caption. He trained them to kill. One survived. And now he wants you to know the truth. It spread like wildfire. Activist groups started organizing raids. Shelters saw spikes in rescues and in strange, scarred animals. But the most important part? The fear was shifting. It wasn't in the eyes of the animals anymore. It was in the eyes of the handlers. For the first time, they were the ones being hunted. I wasn't ready for what came next. The video didn't just go viral, it erupted. Within a week, it hit 3 million views. Then 5. The story spread like gasoline on pavement, caught fire across every corner of the internet. People weren't just angry anymore. They were mobilized. Hashtags trended. Hashtag ghost survived. Hashtag break the cages. Hashtag not just animals. A national animal rights organization launched a campaign, Project 47B, named after Ghost's fight code. Their goal? Expose and dismantle the underground ring network, state by state. But the spotlight came with risk. I started noticing unfamiliar cars outside the motels again. Not moving. Just waiting. One night, someone followed me for 30 miles before turning off into the dark. Another time, I found a tracker duct taped under my truck. They knew who I was now. And they knew I wasn't going to stop. But they underestimated who I had with me. Ghost had become more than a survivor. He was a symbol. A spark that lit 1,000 little fires across the country. In shelters. In alleyways. In the minds of people who finally opened their eyes. I stopped hiding. Started filming openly. Documenting rescues. Visiting shelters. Sharing survivor stories. One by one, cats and dogs and everything in between, the forgotten ones, started getting their stories told. People listened. They cared. And something miraculous began to happen. The survivors, those animals with scars, with missing eyes, twisted paws, they weren't being feared anymore. They were being adopted. Loved. Cherished. One guy messaged me from New York. Said he took in a cat with a missing jaw. Named her Valor. Said she saved his life by waking him during a gas leak. Another woman from Arizona took in a one-eyed pit bull named Chance. Said he won't leave her side. Growls if anyone raises their voice near her. These animals, she wrote, they're not broken. They're warriors. But the more love they received, the more hate I attracted. One night, I got an email with a single image. A photo of me taken through a motel window. Captioned, "You think you're saving them, but you're just signing your own leash." I stared at it for a long time. Ghost sat beside me watching. Unblinking. Unmoving. He looked up, nudged my arm, then walked to the door. He wanted to go. Not run. Not hide. Move. Like always. Because for every threat they made. There were more of us now. More animals who remembered. More humans who believed them. This wasn't a manhunt anymore. It was a reckoning. And Ghost? He was the ghost they couldn't catch. The one that kept coming back. And now he wasn't alone. I stopped counting the states we passed through. Wyoming. Montana. Utah. Colorado. Each one a blur of roadside motels, cheap coffee, dusty backroads, and new scars. Not all on Ghost. Some on me. We weren't just documenting anymore. We were intervening. The calls started coming in from shelters, quiet, coded messages. He's back. She's marked hashtag 39C. There's another one. Limping. Won't let anyone near. They were showing up in waves now. Ghost would walk into these shelters like he owned them. He'd move from cage to cage, sniffing, nodding, staring. And then he'd stop. Stare at one cage. And that's how we knew. That's how we always knew. They remembered him. Sometimes they'd hiss. Sometimes they'd cry. One time, a massive orange tomcat missing an entire front paw saw Ghost and collapsed into a purr so loud the whole room fell silent. The vet techs didn't understand it. But I did. It was the sound of recognition. Of relief. They were no longer alone. And neither were we. Then came Denver. We were supposed to be just passing through. One night. Get fuel. Rest. Keep moving. But fate doesn't take detours. A guy named Felix reached out. He ran an underground rescue out of his garage. Said he had something I needed to see. I was skeptical. Until I walked in. And saw her. White fur. Green eyes. Smaller. Dirtier. Thinner. But unmistakable. Ghost froze. The world stopped turning. He stepped forward like in a dream. Like time had folded in on itself. She meowed once. Soft. Fragile. And he collapsed into her. They curled around each other on that cold concrete floor like they'd been apart for 100 lifetimes. Felix didn't say a word. Didn't need to. I knew what I was looking at. Ghost's sister. His blood. Another survivor from the alley. From the cages. From the ring. Somehow, some way, she'd made it out too. I knelt down. Let them be. Let them reunite. My throat was tight. Eyes burning. It was hope. Not the pretty kind you see in movies. The dirty, painful kind that crawls out of the wreckage and refuses to die. We named her Echo. Because that's what she was. An echo of the past. But more than that, a signal. Proof that the system failed. That survivors didn't just live, they found each other. And together, they were becoming something unstoppable. Ghost looked up at me. Eyes sharp. Steady. He didn't need to speak. I already knew. This war wasn't over. But the family he thought he'd lost? It was whole again. And now we had twice the fire. Bringing Echo into the fold changed everything. She was quieter than Ghost. More cautious. She didn't trust me right away, not like he had. But she watched. Always watched. Just like him. And when Ghost moved, she followed. Like they'd never been apart. The two of them were shadows, mirror images stitched from pain and survival instinct. They communicated in looks, in the flick of a tail, the twitch of an ear. And together, they hunted. I'm not talking about mice. I'm talking about memories. Patterns. Ghost would nose through my folders of research, pawing at certain names. Echo would sit on the laptop keys until I opened specific files. It sounds crazy, hell, it is crazy, but these two weren't acting like animals. They were acting like investigators. Like they remembered the network better than I ever could. I started trusting their instincts more than my own. And it paid off. They led me to a shelter in Albuquerque where a pit mix with a crushed jaw had just been dropped off. He hadn't eaten in days. Didn't react to anything. Until Ghost and Echo walked in. He perked up immediately. Let them near him. The staff cried when he let Ghost nuzzle him. Said it was the first contact he'd allowed since arrival. We named him Grim. Another soldier reclaimed. Another story rescued. I documented every step. Every reunion. Every scar matched to a name, a place, a fight code. I turned it all into a video essay longer than anything I'd ever posted before. I called it. They tried to break them. They forgot what cats become in the dark. It dropped like a hammer. 10 million views in 5 days. Dozens of shelters reported donations flooding in. Volunteers. Fosters. People were no longer afraid of the scars. They understood them now. They wore them like badges. But the video did something else too. It rattled cages higher up the chain. Because a week later I got a burner call. No name. No number. Just a voice. You're making the wrong enemies. Click. I expected fear. But what I felt was rage. Because now I knew they were scared too. Not of me. Of them. Of Ghost. Of Echo. Of Grim. Of the movement they could no longer stop. The hunted had become the story. And the story had grown teeth. We weren't just pulling survivors from cages anymore. We were pulling truth into the light. And truth, once it starts breathing, doesn't die easy. They started fighting back. First, our site went down. DDoS attack. Someone hit the server with enough traffic to fry it in seconds. All our survivor logs, photo archives, GPS markers gone. But not for long. I had backups. 3 of them. And within 48 hours the site was back, stronger, mirrored across servers worldwide. Volunteers I'd never met jumped in to help. Coders. Archivists. Anonymous accounts with no bios, no locations, just skill. Next came the smear campaign. Fake articles popped up. Man behind viral cat rescues tied to extremist groups. Are these animal abuse videos staged for clout? Cat hero or fraud, the man using trauma for fame? Lies. All of it. But they didn't understand something basic. I never showed my face. Never used my real name. The story was never about me. It was about Ghost. Echo. Grim. Valor. Bones. Them. And people knew it. The smear didn't stick. In fact, it backfired. Followers doubled. Survivors poured in. People across the country started tagging us in photos of rescued animals using the scars as IDs, asking if they were part of the ring. We started tracking them. Ghost and Echo could always tell. They'd paw at the right files. Sit beside the right images. I didn't ask how. I stopped trying to explain it. I just followed. Then, in late September, we got a message. Encrypted. No name. Just coordinates. And a photo. It showed a concrete floor. A rusted drain. Chains hanging from a hook in the ceiling. The caption read, "The last training facility is still active. You want to end it? Come here. Come alone." It was a trap. Of course it was. But I didn't care. Because I wasn't going alone. And neither were they. We drove 500 miles through rain, wind, and ash-colored skies. It was a meat-packing plant. Abandoned on paper, but real behind the gates. Ghost paced the dashboard as we approached. Echo crouched low, her eyes locked forward. We parked. Waited. Then, movement. 3 men. Big. Gloved. Armed. No words. Just steps forward. I opened the door, heart hammering. Before they got 10 feet closer, Ghost was already out. Echo followed. Silent. Effortless. And suddenly from the shadows, more. 6 cats. Then 10. Then 20. From gutters. From trees. From rooftops. All scarred. All silent. All ready. The men froze. And I said one thing. You should have never taught them to fight. Then I dropped the GoPro. Clicked record. And let the truth speak for itself. The men panicked. One of them reached for his belt, some kind of taser. Before he could unclip it, Ghost lunged. He didn't attack blindly. He aimed straight for the wrist. Sank his teeth in with surgical precision. The taser hit the ground. Echo and 2 other cats moved like lightning, circling the second man, hissing, leaping, scratching across his face and arms in a flash of white and gray and orange. The third guy? He ran. Didn't even look back. By the time I stepped forward, the fight was over. One man was on his knees, holding his bleeding hand, whimpering. The other was sprawled on the concrete, gasping for air, clothes torn, pride shattered. I picked up the GoPro and walked toward them. No rage. Just clarity. This is over, I said. You don't get to hide anymore. We've got your faces. Your names. Your building. The one holding his wrist looked up, sneering. You think anyone's gonna believe a bunch of cats? Ghost walked past me and sat on the man's chest. Stared directly into his eyes. And hissed. A sound so low, so final, that even I felt it in my bones. They don't have to believe the cats, I said. They'll believe the scars. They'll believe the files. The footage. The survivors. Then I turned to the camera. And I told the story. All of it. Names. Places. The patterns. The way these animals weren't just victims, they were witnesses. Carriers of truth in fur and fawn. And how the people watching could join the fight. Adopt. Share. Speak. The video went up that night. By morning, every major platform was carrying it. #GhostArmy started trending globally. News anchors called it the animal uprising. But it wasn't about war. It was about reckoning. Within 48 hours, that facility was swarmed by federal agents. The ones who didn't run were arrested. The cages were torn down. The files recovered. Dozens of animals were pulled out half-starved, but alive. And Ghost? He didn't rest. He stood watch beside the cages as each survivor was carried out. Echo stayed by his side, nuzzling every trembling cat that passed her. It wasn't a rescue. It was a rebirth. That night, as we sat in the back of the truck under a half-lit sky, Ghost curled into Echo. Grim snored beside them, one ear twitching in dreams. I looked at them, all of them. And I knew. The fight wasn't over. But the darkness was no longer safe. Because now? It was being hunted. Weeks passed. The story stopped being just a story. It became a movement. More rescues. More raids. More cages broken and scars counted. Survivors were finding homes faster than shelters could keep up. People weren't afraid of them anymore, they were inspired by them. We started a registry. Not for adoptions. For fighters. Every scarred animal that came out of that system got a number. Not a tag like the monsters used. A badge. Proof they'd survived. Proof they'd fought back. Ghost was #47B. Echo was #47B too. Grim was #83F. Valor. Bones. Mercy. Chance. They all had numbers. But behind every number was a story. And the world was listening. Then came the invitation. A national animal welfare conference, biggest in the country, wanted to dedicate an entire segment to the silent uprising. They asked me to speak. I don't do speeches. I don't like stages. But I knew I had to go. Not for me. For them. For every creature that had ever clawed its way out of hell. I brought Ghost with me. And Echo. And Grim. They sat in the front row like little generals in a war room. When I stepped on stage, the lights were blinding. The applause felt too big for me. I wasn't anyone. Just a guy who took a shortcut one night and found a bleeding cat under a dumpster. I looked at the crowd, hundreds of faces. Some crying. Some clutching photos of their own survivors. And I said, you didn't save them. They saved us. Silence. Then a wave of clapping. Not polite. Powerful. Raw. I told the story, the dogs, the alley, the first night, the break-ins, the army of cats, the warehouse, the scars. And I ended with this. They tried to break him. They failed. And in failing, they gave him purpose. This is not the story of a rescue. This is the story of a revolution. And it's just getting started. The standing ovation shook the walls. But Ghost? He just blinked, turned, and walked toward the exit. Like he already knew the next chapter was waiting. Because after everything, every cage, every wound, every nightmare, he never stopped moving, never stopped fighting. Not for vengeance, but for every soul still trapped in the dark. And we would find them. All of them. I never went back to my old life. How could I? After you see the darkness, really see it, you don't go back to a 9 to 5 and beer on the couch like nothing happened. You change. Or you die inside. Ghost didn't let me die. He gave me a reason to wake up. A reason to fight. And not just for him, for all of them. We bought land up north. A cold, quiet stretch of forest with a battered barn and an empty house. We called it the Haven. Not a shelter. A fortress. For the broken. For the scarred. For the ones the world called damaged. Ghost roamed every inch of it like a king. Echo guarded the perimeter. Grim slept near the fire, twitching in his dreams but safe for the first time in his life. They came in waves. Strays. Survivors. One's other shelters turned away, too aggressive, too wounded, too far gone. But not here. Here, they were family. I built the database. Trained volunteers. We had code names, maps, encrypted check-ins. Some called us paranoid. We called it prepared. Because even as the media moved on, we knew the truth. The monsters hadn't disappeared. They'd just gone deeper. But now we were watching. We were hunting. And this time, they couldn't hide behind shadows. Because the shadows belonged to us. Sometimes I catch Ghost sitting at the edge of the woods, staring into the trees. Still. Focused. Like he hears something coming. Or maybe remembering. I kneel beside him and whisper, "We did good, didn't we?" He never looks at me. Just blinks. But I swear I hear it in his breath. Yes. I get letters now. Emails. Handwritten notes. Drawings from strangers. People thanking me. Thanking him. Saying their cat, one they rescued, started watching the door after dark. Hissing at strangers. Sleeping with one eye open. They ask, is this normal? I tell them it is now. Because we didn't just save lives. We changed them. Ghost changed me. He reminded me that loyalty doesn't speak. That courage can weigh 5 pounds and walk on silent feet. That sometimes heroes don't wear capes, they wear scars. And if you're lucky, they come back. They look you in the eyes. And they stay. Until the work is done. Until the cages are empty. Until every monster is hunted down and every scar tells a story of survival. This wasn't a rescue story. This was a war story. And Ghost? He was the ghost of their sins. And he made sure they'd never sleep easy again.